All right, with that, what we wanted to do tonight is do with our relationship with LTYSD, and Peter's right, we couldn't deliver the sports without the help of LTYSD. We use the turf stadium now for football. We use the gyms for volleyball and basketball. They've got a lot of great stuff going on. I had Dr. Lancaster, I heard him do this talk just a few weeks ago, so that's a fascinating talk, so we invited him here tonight. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Lancaster to talk about what's going on in the school district and an upcoming school bond. Dr. Lancaster.
Well, the talk Scott saw is about 45 minutes. We reduced this to 15, so you won't get that talk tonight, but if you want to, invite me back and I'll give you the full spiel. We've got a really short period of time, and I'm going to go as quickly as I can because y'all got a long agenda, I think, tonight. Cover just a handful of things. Give you 2 minutes of our enrollment. It's no surprise to anybody, but I'll review some history there. Talk about your tax rate, and that's important because of how it's going to impact a possible bond election, and then the possibility of a TRE. I'll tell you a little bit about what that is and why we might consider that. And then I've got tonight, as they already said, Randy Belk is our Assistant Athletic Director for just a few more days. Johnny Hill is our CFO, and Mark Alvarado snuck in, our Director of Communications. In case you had really hard questions, we needed those folks here to bail me out when I go astray. But we've got good news for you, I think. So regarding the bond election and then some details that will impact specifically LTYA. Here's our enrollment since we opened 30 some odd years ago. Since the last 10 years, we've grown 76%. This makes us today the eighth fastest growing district in the state of Texas. There are 1,200 districts in the state of Texas. We are the 8th fastest growing. Frisco may be fastest. We are by far the fastest in the Central Texas area on a percentage basis. Leander may have more students than us, but they're a 30,000 student district. We're 10,000. On a percentage basis, we're by far the fastest. 76% or 4,200 students in the last 10 years. Here is a projection for the next 10 years. Here's where we are today, 98, probably closer to 9,800 today. Some of you move away at the end of the year and don't tell us, so our enrollment trickles off as people start going on vacation. But as today, we would say 9,800. Our demographer projects we'll have a little over 15,000 in the next 10 years. That works out to be about a 61% growth. Now, I'll tell you this, 10 years ago, they projected today we'd have 9,200 students, not 9,800 students. 10 years ago, they projected about a 60% growth as well, and we ended up with 76%. So I put this phrase conservatively there. Our demographer is projecting about 6,000 students in the next 10 years, or 61%. That's likely to be more than that. But it's based on water, it's based on all kinds of things. We have the land. We have 116 square miles. We're built on, Johnny, a third of that, maybe, give or take. And so we've got a lot of room to grow. Eames, by comparison, has 29 square miles, 30 square miles. They're built out. They are slightly declining enrollment by comparison. So we've got a lot of room to grow. Your tax rate, this is important because I'm going to talk to you about the bond election. Before I can talk to you about a bond or a TRE, you need to know how your tax rate works. Most people don't. You get a tax bill, you curse when you open it, and then you look at the biggest number on there. What is it? The school district. You curse again. But beyond that, we don't really know much about our tax bill. Your tax bill has 2 figures for your school taxes, not county, not city, not ACC, or whoever else. We have 2 portions of your school tax bill. The first is the M&O, or maintenance and operation. That's our checkbook. That's what we use to buy tires and fuel and food and pay salaries. 81% of our budget, 82 or 3% of our budget is payroll. The vast majority of our budget is to pay our staff. Gasoline, utilities, everything else. The first dollar of that $1.04 is subject to recapture back with the Robin Hood payment we make back to the state. To the tune of $40-some-odd million this year, right off the top of our budget, goes straight back to the state. All told, in the history of Robin Hood, we've given nearly $400 million, just Lake Travis ISD alone, back to the state of Texas, which is a big amount of money. If we didn't have a Robin Hood system, your M&O tax rate could be as low as 60 cents. Wouldn't that be great? Our debt service is the other part of your tax rate. $36.75, that is used exclusively to pay off debts. When we call for a bond election, typically the tax rate that goes up is on the INS side, not the M&O side. The total tax rate today is $1.4075. Without Robin Hood system, we'd be at about $1. But what you need to know is if we call for a bond election, it only affects this. However, people get this very confused. They assume if we call for $250 million in bonds that we can use that to pay salaries and buy tires and things like that, and we cannot. These are very separate pots of money that are legally separated. You can't. If I have $5 million left over in the bond election, or somebody complains and we don't put terrazzo flooring and I save $500,000, I can't shift that money to salaries or computers or whatever. It's just, it has to stay in construction and retirement of debt. I can't not build a $30 million elementary school and give that money instead to teachers and classrooms. It's not legal, it's not possible. So those are separate. When we call for a bond election, it will impact your debt service. But I got good news about that coming up. M&O tax rate in 2005, the legislature maximum at that time was $1.50, and everybody, most people in the state, like us, like Lake Travis, the tax rate, total tax rate was $1.50 for M&O. In 2005, the state compressed that or reduced, lowered your school tax rate by a third. Most people didn't even know it. We didn't get credit for it, and we lost a third of our revenue over a 2-year time period. And schools haven't recovered since that time. It's been a difficult adjustment. It was to have been replaced by the business margins or franchise tax, which never actually occurred. That money did not replace the $5.4 billion that was lost to public education in that 2-year time period. In the state at that time, when they lowered the tax rate from maximum $1.50 to $1, they added a series of pennies. This is important. They added 4 golden pennies. These are golden for 2 reasons. The school board can add them to your tax rate without your permission. It doesn't require a community vote. And they're not subject to recapture. So the money, the property values in the state, we get to keep that. We're subject to recapture on the first dollar, but these 4 golden pennies are not subject to recapture, and the board can enact them. So when we lost a third, what did every school board in the state do? They added the 4 golden pennies just like that because they could. Then the state also created 2 additional silver pennies. They're less valuable because we have to ask for your permission in the form of a community vote. That's the tax ratification election, TRE. They're also not subject to recapture. So those 6 pennies, we get to keep any increase in property values associated with those 6 pennies. We don't have those in Lake Travis. Those are not currently on your tax rate. We're at $1.04, not $1.06. Then the state also created 11 copper pennies. Wouldn't you have liked to be in the room? I'm sure alcohol was involved when all these people were talking about gold and silver, copper pennies. This is a fun combination. These are least valuable because it requires a TRE, a community vote, and they're subject to recapture. The problem for Lake Travis is the recapture rate goes up for these 11 pennies. Today, for our first dollar is 44, but anything after that, those 11 pennies, 2/3 of that is kept by the state. So we'll never ask you for that. You'd vote it down anyway, and we're not going to even ask you for it. So when we call for a TRE, it will be only for those 2 additional pennies. We already have those. We're not going to ask you for those. So that's really, when we talk about it in a minute, TRE is only for 2 additional pennies. What do we get for that? We get $1 million per penny in increased revenue that we get to keep. That's $2 million for those 2 pennies. I'll tell you more about that in just a second. Here's the history of your tax rate. The compression occurred in those 2 years from $1.50 down to $1, back up to $1.04. That hasn't changed since then. The only change in your tax rate occurred in November of 11 when the community passed the $158.5 million bond election for LTMS, the new LTMS, West Cypress Hills Elementary, and a number of renovations that occurred at that time. Since that time, your tax rate hasn't changed, nor is it expected to in the foreseeable future. And the city of Lakeway just throws me under the bus and they say they're going to lower their taxes. And what does everybody in town who's thinking about it go, well, if the city of Lakeway is smart enough to do that, why can't the school district lower their tax rate? I mean, they're nice people. Why can't, if Steve Jones and the mayor are smart enough, why can't Brad and the board president figure that out too? There's three major reasons why we can't lower that. First of all, we are subject to recapture and the city's not. We give 44% of our budget right off the top. It was 39.5% last year, it's 44% this year, right off the top. The irony is, you get an optional homestead exemption. Most of you don't even know that. We give you a 20% discount on, if your house is $500,000, you're paying taxes on $400,000. We don't collect 20% of the residential taxes in our community, in our school district. 75% of our taxes are residential based, the remainder is our business. We don't collect but 80% of that, but our Robin Hood payment is calculated on 100%. So that's the other kicker. We're making a Robin Hood payment on money we don't even collect. The district does not get to keep any increase in local values. The city does. I'll give you an example. From last year to this year, our total taxable values increased, our taxes increased $10 million. Of that amount, we get to keep the 4 golden pennies. That's about $400,000. The state absorbs the rest right off the top. We don't get to keep. So I went on the Parade of Homes today out in Rough Hollow. $3 million home, $2 million home. That's wonderful. We don't get the money. It doesn't help us any. We open Lexus, Sonesta, we build Field of Dreams, whatever you name it. We build all this. We don't get to keep the money. The state keeps the money according to the funding system. We keep 4% or about 3.9% of the $1.04. The city gets to keep any increase in local values. That's why they're lowering their taxes. Finally, we gave you a 20% homestead exemption. That's a double penalty for the school district. Not only do we not collect it, we lose $14 million a year in lost revenue for that discount. We're glad for that. But I got to make a Robin Hood payment on money. The good news is we just got a little relief of that. That's part of the other presentation. I won't bore you with that tonight, but we got a little bit of credit for that. The good news is we're looking at a bond election. Here's a quick history of what we've done in the past. Our most recent bond election, $158.5 million for those events in 2005, 03, and 01. All of those passed. This bond election, if the board calls for that, and later in June, it'll be for middle school 3, elementary number 7, and then a huge variety of upgrades, renovations, repairs. Because of declining revenue from the state, we can't buy buses out of the M&O fund. We don't have the reserve. A school bus today is $110,000, $115,000. How many are we buying, Johnny? 20?
We'll buy about 45.
45, excuse me. 45 buses over the next few years. With this bond election,
Yes, sir.
we bought 11 a couple of years ago. We bought 10, but they threw one in for free, actually, believe that or not. That's great. I think they throw in a Porsche for the superintendent, but no, actually school bus for the kiddos. And then technology as well. Technology is so expensive, we cannot afford to buy that out of our pocket anymore. Most of our budget is payroll. The rest is 10% of that is in fixed costs like utilities, insurance, fuel costs, food costs, things that we can't negotiate or tighten our belt on. We can tighten our belt on about 5% of our budget. That doesn't leave us room to buy big ticket items like school buses and technology. The good news for LTYA is 2 projects that are being considered as bond election. We would renovate and upgrade the high school upper field, the track competition field, and put turf on there and do some safety renovations to that field, put artificial turf there, and then put artificial turf on the 2 middle school competition fields. If the bond passes and we build middle school number 3, that competition field at middle school 3 will have artificial turf as well. That's, as you know better than, as well as we do at least, that widely opens up our ability to offer that field for use by LTYA. It's a very tough balance between the amount of time we use the fields and the amount of time we let you use the fields, because we can beat that down to concrete if we're not careful. And we've got there's a constant tension on the use of those fields, and we want them to stay healthy and green, but if we put artificial turf down, that will greatly expand that use. This is about $1.9 million, Johnny. This is about 1.7 for those 2 fields. So not more to come on that. This is just a discussion item for the school board. They've not voted on this. I suspect they will approve. We started with nearly $400 million in projects to consider. We whittled that down to $250 million, $251, and it's under consideration right now. Here's the timeline we've used for the bond election. We started with a variety of assessments, facility, technology, food service assessment. We formed a bond advisory committee this spring, 28 folks from our community. Jeremy Self was the chairperson of that. They just made their presentation last Tuesday night in May. They'll call for the bond election in June if they choose to do so. We'll start our community presentations later this summer. The election will be in November. If it passes, we would start selling those bonds in spring, and then we would begin construction right away. We're discussing a plan right now for middle school number 3 to start that construction like Monday after the bond election. We're looking at a delivery method that allows us to start that a little quicker. Elementary number 7 would probably start construction in spring of 18. And it's possible that we're discussing the possibility of opening middle school number 3 in the fall of 19 as opposed to the fall of 20, because LTMS is very crowded and getting more crowded every day. There's a lot of other projects. It's not an exhaustive list, but that's our primary projects there. Here's the really good news for you as taxpayers. We can call it the $250 million, where the total currently is about $251.7. Just to give you a comparison, here is our 2011 bond election. Prior to the bond election, our tax rate was $1.31. When you approved that bond election November 11 and we sold those bonds in spring of 12, it raised our tax rate 9 cents for $158.5 million. The good news is we can call $251 million for zero change to your tax rate. I'll tell you why in just a second. The bottom line is, last bond election was a 9-penny increase. This is a 45% increase in the dollar amount of projects for no change to your tax rate, zero impact. Not your tax bill, your tax rate won't change. And I'll tell you more about that in just a second. So what is a TRE? The school district must call a TRE when it's asking voters to consider raising the tax rate. We would ask voters to consider raising the M&O rate and at the same time simultaneously decreasing the INS rate by the same amount. This is called a penny exchange. We would move 2 pennies to the M&O operations side, that's our checkbook side, from our savings account side, the INS side. The total taxes paid by the homeowner would not increase. The tax rate would not increase as a result of the penny exchange. However, we'd see an additional $2 million. The total tax rate would remain the same, $1.4075, whether you approve that tax rate or not. What's happened in our TRE? Here's our current tax rate, $1.40. When Scott, I shared these slides with Scott, sometimes it has a little formatting error. That's $36.75. Here's our, if you vote for the TRE, if we do this and you vote for it, this goes up 2 pennies, this goes down 2 pennies, but the tax rate is the same. $2 million is generated there. If you vote against it, this tax rate stays the same from the top. Nothing changes. We just don't get any money out of the system. I was very proud of that. I expect some cheering or something there, but so what do we do with this money? The bad news is we don't get to spend it on salaries or computers or helmets or gasoline. It is simply, we're losing another $2 million this fall from the legislature in the form of ASSETAR, additional state aid for tax reduction. That's the other presentation. Don't have time to tell you what it is. It's just a big old hole that they're going to hit us with this fall. It's about a $2.1 million hit. And so we're just going to, if we do the TRE this fall, we're going to use it to just fill that hole. It's less money we're paying to the state. We don't get to go out and spend it. We don't get to buy anything with it. It's not very exciting, but it means we're not losing $2 million. We're just breaking even if we ask you for that penny exchange. It's not additional revenue to spend on salaries or positions or classrooms or buses. We're just significantly going to fill that $2.1 million hole. So to recap, the bond election, $250 million. Tax rate stays the same for TRE. Those tax rates don't move. Now, I've been in 5 different school districts in the state of Texas. I've done a lot of bond elections from a teacher and principal, assistant sup, and superintendent. I've never, ever been in a district where we called a bond election and the tax rate did not change. That is astonishingly rare. Hayes Consolidated just called $250 million, zero change to the tax rate. Does anybody know what the percentage pass-fail was on that? $250 million, 2 schools, almost identical to ours, and zero change to the tax rate. Make a guess. What do you think? What percent voted for? What percent voted against? Ballpark.
51-49.
Oh man, that is cynical. It was 60-40. 60-40, which I think is terrible. 40% of the people in Hayes Consolidated voted against that. No change to your tax rate. It's not going to cost you any additional money to build these 2 schools. Why not take advantage of that? And usually people vote against it because they don't believe you. They think you're lying. And it can't be true. How can we do this? How can we call for $250 million and not change your tax rate? The main reason is we don't get to keep any increase in local values. Like I said, the city does. They can lower their tax rate. $10 million in total values increase, we get to keep $400,000 of $10 million. That's true for the M&O side of your tax rate. It's not true for the INS side of your tax rate. Think of it as INS as a home mortgage. You get a significant increase in your salary. You get a big bonus. Some people choose to start doubling down on their home mortgage. And you carve off 10 years of your total life of a 30-year loan or whatever. We're doing the same thing. We have taken the money that we have gotten and increased values. This year alone, our local values increased 11.5%, 11%. 40+% over the last 5 years, our values have increased. Johnny and his staff have been paying down our existing debt very aggressively with that income that we get to keep. This year alone, we've paid an additional principal amount of $15.7 million, which is a savings to you of $9 million in interest payments alone. In the last 5 years, we've saved our taxpayers $27 million in aggressively using this increase in values on the INS side to pay our debt off early. It's just like a really big mortgage. Same concept, we're just getting out of our debt earlier. What does that do? That allows us to go and buy a new house. And with our mortgage is going to stay the same for the future. There's a big difference between tax rate and tax bill. I'm saying your tax rate won't change. Some of you are going to hear me say, Brad said your taxes aren't going to go up. That's not true. Why is that not true? If your tax rate stays the same, how can your tax bill go up?
Because the values.
The value's going up 5 to 11% a year. Your tax bill is going to go up. But if the value goes up and the tax rate goes up 9 pennies, it's going to go up a lot more. Your tax rate will not change, is our promise to you. When your home value increases, your tax bill will go up, whether the tax rate changes or not. The good news is your tax rate will be unchanged. We need a bond election to keep up with this growth conservatively, 61% in the next 10 years. We're considering, we may do this in the fall, we may even do it a year later. We're waiting on the legislature to finish to see what kind of financial impact we're going to have after the legislature's over. We don't think we're going to get a lot of relief, and it may be necessary to do this fall. We may put it off till the next fall. When we open middle school number 3, though, the bond funds create the building. We need M&O funds to pay the salary, and we'll need this money initially to get out of our acetar hole, and the funding source we're losing, but we need that money to open the school building. We can build the building, but it takes money to staff that building. And schools are inefficient for the first 3 to 5 years because they're not full yet. The fuller the building gets, the cheaper it is to run it. Because a principal costs the same whether you have 1,000 kids in the middle school or 400, 600 kids in middle school. Librarian, custodial crew, cafeteria crew, all those fixed costs stay the same whether you have 400 kids or 1,000 kids. The fuller the building gets, the more efficient we get. When you open a building, it's inefficient for a few years. So we need some additional money to get that building open. Whether we have a bond election or not, whether we have a TRE or not, whether either one of them passes or not, your tax rate won't change. Does that make sense? Now you got to trust me. Somebody's sitting there thinking, that can't be true. Those school district people will lie if you give them half of it. They never tell the truth. Round Rock School District failed because the community felt like they were not being honest with them. Big, big pushback. Now they had a big old natatorium in there too, and that people didn't want a natatorium. We don't have a crazy football stadium like Allen. We don't have an administration building. I wanted a hot tub. The bond advisory committee said no. We're not doing anything crazy. We're building some schools. We're buying a bunch of buses. We're doing some technology. We're doing HVAC repairs, lighting upgrades, the things you'd expect us to do. Nothing's crazy in this bond election. Once the board approves this list, we'll make it public. And I wanted you to know about the artificial turf. We'll get some serious pushback on the turf. You know that. People will go crazy over artificial turf. So we called it what do we call it? Artificial safety surface, or that'll last about 10 minutes before we'll try. Scott, that's it. That's just a quick setup for bond election. The main thing I want to tell you is we got a little over $3 million in there for artificial turf for 3 of our fields. If we build the 3rd middle school, it'll have artificial turf on the competition field as well. That's a great benefit, I hope, to LTYA and our ability to schedule more time in there. But Johnny's here, Brandy's here, Marco's here. What questions do you have on any of that? I'd be happy to answer that. Yes.
Where do we stand on the second high school?
That's a great question, and we'll decide that long after I retire.
We didn't retire.
But, depends on the bond election, if that fails, I'll be leaving sooner rather than later. And enrollment years, probably 7 or 8 years. What we'll do is pass this bond election and get these schools started. And the next thing we've got to talk about as a community, and I don't know how we'll do this, but there's a dozen ways to open a secondary configuration. We've got to decide, somehow we've got to decide what's the pulse of our community, what do people want? You have a multiple of options. We have a 912 building, you build another 912 building like Bernie Champion and Bernie High School. You do the Plano model where you have a couple of 9-10 high schools that feed a single 11-12 senior high. You do the Allen concept where you have a 9th grade center in a gigantic 10, 11, 12 building, or some variation of all of those. There's a dozen ways to configure that. It comes down to, what does the community want? Do they want 1 mascot or 2? 1 football team or 2? One marching band or 2? And that's hard to determine because it's generally split on academic lines or athletic fine arts competition lines. And it's hard to tell. There are pros and cons to both. I've been in Allen ISD where they've got 1,500 kids probably walking the stage in a couple of weeks. And they have a huge high school and they do it very, very well. I've lived next door to Plano. And Plano would probably tell you, don't do it like us, because the problem is you got to bus kids between the 9th and 10th grade buildings to the varsity buildings for the varsity competition, varsity band. You're busing kids all day long. Every period, somebody's going between the two. It's very complex. But mathematically, our building currently has capacity for 3,500 students. With the addition of the old Lake Travis Middle School, that's 1,000 student capacity. Now it's one big high school. That'll take us 7 or 8 years into the future. So in the next 2 or 3 years, we need to decide what kind of building do we want, and then we need to set about going to build that. And that's a $100 to $150 million project. Very expensive. What else? Anything else? Yes, sir.
That Hayes example you gave, were they doing a similar exchange with that?
They did not. The TRE is a separate concept. I'm glad you asked that. Bond election is one ballot with a separate vote. The TRE, totally disconnected. One has nothing to do with the other, although you think they would. They're necessary together, but you vote them separately. They did not do a TRE. And we may not either. It depends on the outcome of the legislature. The lieutenant governor and the speaker, or if you keep up, are not getting along right now. There's a lot of saber rattling going on, but that's usually it all kind of settles down. We've got 9 days left.
1 week from tomorrow.
1 week from tomorrow. And what do we call that? Sine die? Hey, how do you say? Am I saying that right?
Sine die.
Sine die is the last day. Why do we choose Latin for the end of the legislature? I don't know, but those are separate concepts. Johnny predicts, if you ask Johnny Hill, he'll predict this bond election in Lake Travis will be 60-40 split. He thinks 40% will vote against it. Yes, sir.
Hey, Brad, I don't know if you covered it, I apologize, but where will the 3rd middle school go?
Good. Vale Divide, our transportation center, we've got a total property of 130 some odd acres there. Transportation distribution center sits on about 30 of that. 100 acres just past that. There's not a road there yet. And if you turn from 71, you turn left on Vale Divide, you go to the entrance of our transportation center. If it passes, we'll build a road. We're going to straighten Vale Divide out and go straight back past the transportation center. We'll build middle school 3 there. One option is to maybe convert that in a few years to the second high school configuration. That's a possibility. We're going to We may design that building in such a way that it can be enlarged and added onto to be a second high school. That's one option. But you hate to do that on a relatively new building. 3 or 4 year old construction by then, and then to start building on it again. That's not a great option, but it's a possibility. But that'll be that next location. Middle school number 4, we already had 40 acres out on Reimer's Peacock Road. If you go way out 71, what's the Mexican food place there? La Cabana. You turn left, just right past that restaurant. There's a kind of a private drive back in there. We own 40 acres there. We just bought 190 acres from the Lenora Reimer's estate for $5 million for some kind of secondary high school configuration, and probably middle school 4 on a very close site, just like our high school and LTMS middle school used to be. And we've got nearly 200 acres out there now. Got a really good deal. We felt like $5 million. We hope the bond election passes because we did that on a reimbursement resolution. And we want to pass the bond election to pay ourselves back. We paid cash for that $5 million, and we need it back because we'll go under if the bond doesn't pass. So no pressure. What else? Anything else?
I have a question for Scott or Randy. Scott, can you underscore again how much LTYA depends on the district? I think you used an example of how much of the gym time that we use that's available.
Randy knows that during basketball season, we use about 100 hours a week. During the week, we book every elementary school and every middle school for every available hour, Monday through Thursday, for practice, and we use it. We have roughly 800 kids that play winter basketball with us. And then we're totally dependent on it in volleyball. In the fall, we have about 200 girls that play volleyball. And Steve will tell you, this is Steve Johnson, he was at the bar, he's our soccer guy.
Thanks, guys.
But right now we probably have, 200 to 300 kids playing soccer Friday nights and Saturdays between the middle schools and the high school. Really to achieve, we hear what everybody says, we want paved parking, we want bathrooms, we want stadium seating. So we said, great. I called Brandy and said, hey, any chance we can pull this off? And she's very accommodating to us for that. And so far, at least the feedback I get from Steve is it's really positive.
This is not this question for you or Brandy, but you all just have one field now that's turfed in the district.
Yeah.
So this would be a pretty big expansion of that opportunity.
Yeah, 3 more. Well, 4 if you count middle school number 3. Yeah. 4 more sources. That's a lot. And it's great for our band. We can use it. We'd love to do more. Westlake or Eanes has, I think, all of their fields turfed. That's a sizable commitment. We're taking a step in that direction. We were at Dripping Springs Friday, watching baseball. Man, that's a gorgeous, fully turfed baseball field. It's just, Scott said, football's about $1 million. I thought baseball's a little less than that, but it's close. It's very, very expensive. And not everybody in the community agrees with it. We'll take a beating over that. But the good news is, in case you don't know, the previous bond advisory committee, not this last bond, but the one before that, did not want to do any significant athletic renovations. For some reason, they were nervous about that. But they said if there was money left over, put artificial turf in the football stadium, the competition stadium. We got to the end of that 2 bond elections ago, and we had earned $9 million in interest. And so, is that correct, John? $9 million? We took $750,000 4 years ago out of the interest earned. It wasn't even leftover bond money. We used interest earned money to install that turf in the current field. Not taxpayer dollars, not bond dollars, interest earned on our bond investments. We thought that was a pretty good deal. We took a public beating over installing that video display board. It cost us $450,000, $500,000. We paid for that right at 3 years, and now we're bringing in about $150 or $60,000 a year and kept revenue that's not subject to recapture on that, just advertising dollars. We thought that was a smart move at the time, and people have very strong feelings about this, but I think I'm preaching to the choir today about we need those fields turfed for our use, and it can greatly expand it for your use as well, which we are glad to do. It just alleviates some of the tension on scheduling because people want it constantly, and we want to. If they're turfed, man, we can go to town on them. What else? Anything else? I got to give credit, man. I mean, do we have an LTYA golf program?
We do.
We do? Really?
Yeah, we do.
Well, girls golf won their third state championship in a row. Boys won football state championship, obviously. Baseball just got knocked out. They lost the first game, won the second game, got knocked out in the third game yesterday. Softball went into the playoffs. Our kids win district nearly every event we compete in and make it into the playoffs. And that's not an accident. That does not start in 7th grade. That starts in LTYA. And we appreciate the very close relationship our coaches have with you guys. I think y'all are running similar plays and similar programming, and it shows when just a couple of years into big school 6A, we whipped Conroe Woodlands like a rented mule in football. And it was a fun game to watch. Now, we've forgotten the game before where we got beat like a rented mule by Katie, but that's different. We've forgotten who remembers that. That starts in LTYA. It's not an accident. We appreciate that relationship. We know we can't always give you every minute you want, and it's always needs more and more and more, but Brandy has been awesome. She's leaving in 9 or 10 days, moving on to great things at the state UIL office. Hank will hire a replacement. I'm sure a very poor substitute for Brandy Bell. I gotta give her a shout out, and I appreciate the comments earlier. She's one of the best people I've ever worked with in my career. Brandy Bell is just second to none. I'm still begging her to stay. I really am. She promises that we're going to win more games in the UIL, and they're going to rig games in our favor. She's going to take care of us, and we're going to cheat, and we're going to win all kinds of stuff. And thank you for having me, Scott. I appreciate the invitation. I'll be happy to come back anytime, give you the full deal, but I hope that answered your questions about why we're looking for a bond election with our growth, why we might call TRE. And the good news is, what's it going to do to your tax rate? Nothing. Make sure you pass that on. Thank you.